welcome to the Aces Up Your Sleeve podcast. I'm Sabrina.
And I'm Cade.
And we are two A-spec, kinky, ADHD, so many more things therapists. And we like talking about relationships and how we engage with one another with all of these identities and things. Quick reminder, disclaimer, our normal thing. This is not therapy. It's not therapeutic advice. It's what we might do if we were in your position and our thoughts on the situation. And we've got really just one main question, but we think it's going to be kind of a deep one for this episode today. And it's from a wonderful listener who says, how do I explain to my partner that I think I'm demisexual? Now that I've heard the podcast episodes about asexuality and demisexuality, it makes sense, but I'm afraid I'm going to hurt their feelings or that they'll take it the wrong way.
Yeah, this is something that comes up for me in my work with clients quite a bit too, as they start to uncover for themselves, libido things, sexuality things, their interests, things that they've just done because they felt like they had to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's tough.
It's especially tough because I think our society is a very the amount to which you're interested in sex is directly related to your partner's worth.
Yeah.
Your worth, but really your partner's worth. If you want sex from your partner, it's because they are sexy and attractive. If you don't, it's because they're ugly and bad and wrong in some way. And it's that's not at all how that works. But I think it makes it really hard to then talk about with a partner because it's okay, but if I tell you that I'm not actually super interested in sex all the time, are you going to take it personally, which you would have every right to do because of how our society looks at this stuff, especially if your partner is femme or was raised femme.
Yeah. Yeah, and if you're on TikTok, you might see some trends going around of messages from the partner where they are trying to make you feel better, but they're actually making you feel worse. And sometimes that hinges on you being I feel unattractive, and then your partner being I love you no matter how you look, or whatever, where they mean it so sweetly, but because in our society, your partner is supposed to reaffirm your attractiveness every step of the way, or it means some moral judgment that's bad.
Right. That you are, as a fact, unattractive, as if that could be a factual thing. And that makes you less worthy.
Yeah. And that if you as the partner are not constantly reaffirming your partner's attractiveness, then you're devaluing them or you're insulting them or whatever it may be.
And the best way to reaffirm their attractiveness is sex.
Yeah. Which is wild.
Yeah.
Wild from my perspective, but I get why that is considered the norm.
Yes, I can understand it. I also think it's just so it's such a difficult experience to have, especially if you happen to have a really different sex drive, libido, interest in sex, all of these things than your partner. It's that's already such a difficult divide to engage with. It's one that's hard to talk about because other people are very likely to give some kind of a basically one of you is in the right and one of you is in the wrong. Either someone wants sex too much and they're a problem and a pervert and bad, or one of you wants sex too little and they're a prude or something is wrong with them that way. And it's is there maybe just we each have a different desire for the amount of sex we have, and we need that's a thing that we can work on together to figure out what works best for our relationship and not a value judgment on either one of us.
Yeah. And in our society, it also makes it especially hard for men to talk about it when they're the lower libido in the relationship. It doesn't matter how many partners they have. If they have the lower libido, there's an extra layer of embarrassment that comes with even admitting that or whatever. And the extra shame of I should probably be the high libido person in the relationship, which if Sabrina and I could undo that for the world, we would be undoing it. Hopefully this helps undo it for at least those of you that are listening.
Yeah. And we say all this just to validate listener and question asker, how difficult this question, this situation is, right? And how valid you are in being I can't quite figure out how to talk to them about this. And having fear of hurting their feelings and all that stuff is that makes so much sense. Because it is such kind of a touchy topic. And for really annoying, society reasons.
Yeah, yeah, it's much more than just those dynamics between you and your partner. It's all of this historical and societal pressure that has trickled down to compound how anxiety inducing it feels to tell your partner this or to try to explain it. The fact that you're already predicting your partner might have their feelings hurt or that they'll take it the wrong way shows us that you've put some thought into this, and if you've been with this partner for a long time, you might be guessing correctly. So we can take it from that stance of like, yeah, what if it does hurt their feelings or they do take it the wrong way? Because
Yeah.
sadly, none of us, you can't control how your partner does interpret it.
I think that's the first step, right? Is like whenever I'm working with folks on basically how to like set a boundary or like talk to someone about a hard thing or like all these things is essentially like remembering that their reaction isn't actually your responsibility. Like, yes, of course, if you walk up to me like, "Hey, I think I'm demisexual and I don't really want to fuck you anymore," eh, then they might be like, "What the unmitigated fuck?" Like, there are more
Right.
effective ways than that, and you can also put all of the time and care and effort into wording it like quote unquote perfectly, and they still might be like, what the fuck?" Like, there's kind of a part of it that you have to disconnect from in terms of like, and just because they do have their feelings hurt or they take it the wrong way doesn't actually mean that like you've done anything wrong. It doesn't mean that they've done anything wrong, and it is something that you can get through if you're both willing to
Mhm.
try.
Yeah, I've heard people say phrase it in the most beautiful ways, like, "Hey, I'm learning more about my attraction, my libido, and I'm figuring out for me that what is most attractive is when I really connect with you and when we feel so attuned and it's just super beautiful and that's when I'm the most aroused or the most attracted." And the partner goes, "Well, what about all this expensive laundry I've been buying?" Or, "Well, what about all this like I've been hitting up the gym and I've been doing my hair and I've been doing this and that, like that doesn't matter to you?" Which is like, "Oh, that's how you took that, even though I just phrased it in such a careful, loving way." So sometimes it's not about what you say, it's about the message that they receive.
Right. And that is going to be, I think it's the thing to always remember is that like people are receiving what you're saying or what you're communicating to them through a filter of their own experiences, right? Like every single sense has a filter over it, right? Like sometimes with clients, I'll talk about it as like a motorcycle helmet. It's covering your ears, it's covering your eyes, it's covering your mouth and your nose. You can feel it on your head. Like it is before anything can get through it, it has to pass through that like membrane. And so it's like, if this person, like, if I had a partner be like, hey, say exactly what you just said, right? Of like, this is what I'm most attracted. I'd be like, oh shit, are we not connecting enough? And that's got everything to do
Mhm.
with like my attachment trauma and my like history of like experiences with rejection and with like connection and all of those things. It actually has not like any partner that I've ever had or will ever have could say it to me, and I would still feel the same way because of my shit.
Yeah.
It has to come through all of my like attachment issues, and then I have to be able to process through that, and then I can process through like what you said and like what is actually happening. And that's just how my brain has to do things.
Yeah, for the question asker, I would say expect some processing time that's needed from your partner because it has to go through all those layers, and expect some clarifying questions that are wildly different from what you were trying to imply because that just happens sometimes.
Yeah.
So expect them to come back and go, does that mean we're not connected lately? Or are you saying we are really connected lately? So you're more aroused lately? Like, what does that mean? Or so you're saying you've never been physically attracted to me? Or what does that mean? Like,
Right.
depending on how you phrase it, a lot of questions could come up.
And take note of like how they phrase it too, that like questions like that is like, so does this mean that you think this about me?
Yeah.
Is that like again that's going to be their insecurity coming up, not. And I think a lot of times what I see most often is that people get stuck in the like, that's not what I said, you're not listening to me. And it's like, no, they are, they're just listening to their trauma first, and of
Yeah.
course they are. And you might have trauma around not being listened to, which might be what you're responding to first. And it's
Mhm.
like, instead, if you can, in order to be like as regulated as you can, kind of like pick a time and a place when like you feel really okay and safe and there's not like something else coming up and all these things, and that you know like okay, I'm gonna have fidgets with me, I'm gonna have like my safe movie on in the background, like whatever you need, so that when those types of things come up and they go through their roller coaster of emotion, you can be working on like, okay, what do I need to do to stay as close to grounded as I can to be there for them? Because you have already done all of the like time and effort of exploring this for yourself. And now they have to do it. And you
Mhm.
got to do it like just for yourself by yourself. They now have to do it with you looking at them.
Yeah, I would maybe encourage them to also have some regulatory strategies at hand. So, if you're picking the time to let them know, I would check in first. So you're asking, how do I explain it? I would start with like setting the stage for it. So asking, hey, I've been doing some self discovery lately. Is now a good time to tell you what I'm learning? And if they're like, my brain's still in work mode, I just got home, or I'm starving, let me eat first, or I'm in the middle of fixing my Animal Crossing island, maybe you wait and you say, can we revisit this in like 30 minutes? Or, oh, okay, maybe this weekend we could chat about it. It's nothing bad. I just am hoping to like share it with you as I'm learning it about myself.
Mm-hmm. Um, I'm also a big fan of like maybe you have a book on asexuality that kind of is
Mhm.
sitting on your nightstand and that you're reading, and that there's like, oh, what are you reading? Oh, I'm reading this really interesting book about like the way that different human sexuality works. Like, not in a, oh, you can't address things directly. I think we all know that I love a good direct conversation. And sometimes that can kind of like give some level of foundational, like, this is a neutral topic.
Mhm.
Um, then when it's like, yeah, as you know, I've been exploring things. And so as I was reading that book about human sexuality, I started thinking about myself and my own experiences of it and realizing that I was kind of identifying with this experience.
Mhm.
And that can sometimes put things on a slightly more neutral ground than like, hey, I think I'm going to have less sex.
Yeah. Which, could also be something they assume you're meaning by it. And you may not mean
Hmm.
that.
Right.
They might assume that this means you're going to have less sex or never have sex again, when really you're just trying to say, like, the foreplay for me is more about XYZ,
Mm,
not so much about the physical stuff. Or you might be trying to explain, like, I enjoy doing those things just depending on where you're at on the A spectrum, because it brings you pleasure, and that in turn makes me feel good. I'm not so concerned about XYZ things in the bedroom, and that's what I've
mhm.
realized.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think that there's a lot that'll have to do with like your actual experience and what you. I think
Mm,
the other thing to remember is also like what you want to share. Like there was a time when coming out was coming out into your community and not sharing who you are with every single person and like sharing every single detail of that. Not that there's anything wrong with sharing who you are with people, but like that there's a really big difference between like I am duty bound essentially to like tell you all these things and like I am excited to tell you these things for you to know me better,
yeah,
or I am excited to step into the community that is waiting for me, that also shares this experience that like, there's nothing wrong with telling your partner and coming out. I also don't think that there's anything wrong if it's just like, hey, I've been doing some exploring and like I think it'd be really nice if we cuddled for an hour before sex.
yeah.
If that is like a thing that would be helpful to you, right? And it doesn't necessarily have to be like, hey, because I'm demisexual, I want us to cuddle for an hour before sex. It can just be like, this
In
would be really
addition,
helpful to me. You know what I mean?
yeah. Yeah, and as you navigate that conversation and the partner asks questions in return and kind of clarifies, you never know. They might come to the realization like, "Oh, that's what that is? Yeah, me too. I just didn't realize it was a thing, or I thought it might hurt your feelings."
Mhm. Yeah, there's a lot of different like options. And I think one thing that when I have conversations where it's like, okay, I'm trying to be really mindful of the other person's feelings, like I don't want you to take it the wrong way, all these things. I just get very, very direct about those types of things too. Hey, I'm feeling some worry about this topic. It's not a bad topic. I'm actually kind of excited to share it with you, but I also really, really want to be heard for what I'm saying and not for what I'm not saying. And that
Yeah.
feels really important to me to name, right? Like, and then when your partner is hearing it, yes, it's still going to go through their motorcycle helmet of experience, but it will, part of that experience will now be you saying, I am trying to be heard for the exact words that are coming out of my mouth
Yeah.
and not for other things.
I know when I told some of my extended family, like, hey, just wanted to give you a heads up that, like, autism runs in our family and ADHD, I definitely eased into that conversation by being like, I know there's a lot of stigma about what I'm about to say. There's a lot of stereotypes out there. So we can get into the nitty gritty of it. But I just wanted to let you know, kind of leading with, I know there might be some hesitancy to accept this or to understand this, and I'm ready for that. And in this case, like with demisexuality, like I'm being a little vulnerable to share this, so I'm hoping we can both be vulnerable.
Yeah, exactly. And like, I think that that can too set the like focus of the conversation up less on I am disclosing this difficult thing to you and more on I am trying to connect with you.
Yeah,
Um and that like I'm pretty anxious. So if you notice that like I'm talking really, really fast and I'm doing all these things, it's not because I'm like frustrated or all these things. Like helping people put very directly into context what you're actually feeling is really
yeah,
important. And we've talked about this before, but that like nobody can actually read you. Again, they're reading your emotional signals, like all these things about like body language and reading nonverbal cues. They're doing that through their helmet and nothing else, as opposed to through your words and their helmet.
yeah,
And so just their helmet. And so if their helmet is like anytime that somebody talks really, really fast, it means that they're upset with me and they just want to be done with the conversation, they fucking hate me. No. If I tell you, hey, I'm anxious and I might start talking fast because of that, that actually gives you a lot more to add into your helmet, filter.
yeah. Yeah,
I'm
so I
going
think setting the stage, yeah, setting the stage is very important, kind of having in mind what you're going to say, what you want to preemptively say or make explicit so that they're not guessing,
mm-hmm.
making sure it's a good time. Yeah, that's all very important. And ultimately, they might still take it in a way that you don't mean. And there might be some hurt feelings. And this is true of dating relationships, friendships, parent kid relationships, whatever it is. Hurt feelings happen, and it's more about the repair that comes after and how
Mm-hmm.
you move through that with the other person or people. So if
Yeah.
it happens, which it might, being prepared to repair and work through it.
And to not necessarily take them personally if you can help it. Like,
Yeah.
I think that's the thing is like, I was just telling you before we started recording, Cade, that my partner and I had a conversation the other night of like, they were like, it just feels like maybe your expectations weren't met. And so, like, I don't know how that could have happened differently. And I'm like, I don't actually know that it could have. I think my expectations are not met. And I don't think it could have happened differently. And I am a little frustrated by that, but I'm not like mad at you. I'm not like, this is just an emotion that happens for people. And when we're in relationships, it happens even more because, like, when I get to control everything around me, then I have many less reasons to have my like if I'm the only one deciding when I get up and when I go do this thing and like what song is on in the car, my expectations are completely and exactly met.
Yeah.
But when I also have to take someone else's expectations into consideration, not all of my expectations are going to be met. And like having quote unquote hard feelings about that, having painful emotions, having frustration, anger, fear, sadness, like these are things that I expect to feel.
Yeah.
And instead of people trying all the time never to have me feel that way, having people who are willing to like allow me to feel that way and love me through it is what matters to me personally anyway.
Mm. I think that's true for a lot of folks, yeah. And equally true that, if you don't want to have to worry about how someone will take something, just don't surround yourself with anybody. Just do your own thing, which,
Uh, what is it?
yeah.
The it's not the Lorax, like the actual Lorax. It's the Onceler who like lives
Oh,
out in the forest by himself and never speaks to anybody. Yeah,
yeah.
big
Yeah,
isolation vibes.
same with the Grinch. He just worries about Max the dog. He doesn't have to worry about everybody else.
I love Max the dog. Yeah, which in case y'all are not noticing, and we know that a lot of y'all are autistic, don't do that. We're social things. don't be not social. Like social is hard but important, and so don't
Yeah.
actually not be social.
Yeah, I mean, if you're like, yeah, that is way too much for me to take on consistently, have some friends or relationships with people who also don't need such consistent
Yes.
co-regulation or interaction or whatever it may be, but
Yep.
still have some people.
Yeah. And I think that's the thing, right? Is like have some people who fit your stuff. My guess is for this question asker that your partner in some way fits you, and your understanding of yourself as demisexual may change some things, right? You may find more acceptance for yourself, maybe stop forcing yourself to do things that you may or may not have wanted to do that you might have been forcing yourself. But it also is just as likely, because we don't know you, that you have already been doing those things and that you've been living fully authentically. And
Mhm.
so this update is literally just that. It's a little update of like, hey, I have a word for
Yeah.
why I like things the way I like them, but I still like them the way that I like them. And that your
Yeah.
partner is already used to that.
Yeah, yeah, some of their if they take it the wrong way, might just be them being like, "Oh, what will this change for us?" And it may
Right.
not change much at all.
Mm-hmm.
The other way that you could explain to your partner that you think you're demisexual is through couples or relationship counseling.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of couples counselors, relationship counselors are happy to be almost like a mediator during those types of conversations. Many of them have what they call like a no secrets policy. So
Mm-hmm.
if you go in and say, "Hey, I'd like to sign me and my partner up for couples counseling. Here's, a little bit about our relationship and here's what I need to tell them." They will say, "Great, and there's no secret, so we will have to tell them that, but I will
Mm-hmm.
help support you through those conversations, help you all find resources, and whatever you need to do to navigate what happens next, I'll be there for that." So that's
Yep.
always an option too.
Yeah. There's a lot of really, really wonderful sex therapists and couples therapists and relationship therapists that like figuring out how to have the tough conversations in itself is a really important goal of therapy for a lot of people. It's this idea of like repair is not actually something that we're taught anywhere ever. Um, that like at most teachers are taught to like, or I don't know what they're taught, but what I experienced from teachers was like stop the conflict
Yeah.
and get back to the topic at hand. And like
Yeah.
that was it. And so like I think that there's something really important to recognize that like this is actually a skill. Repair is a skill that you can build. And rupture is not a thing you can avoid. And so like either you can figure out how to build that skill or you can continue to not ever have the tough conversations and rupture will happen anyway
Yeah.
because you're not having the tough conversations.
It sounds like you're ready to have what could be a tough conversation. So, more of it might be how do you get the support you need to have some skills around what do I do if this goes poorly or they take it the wrong way and I need to do some repair or they need to do some repair? Maybe they really hurt your feelings in what they say and what they kind of project onto you after you tell them this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I will say, just as a resource, there is a book that is written by two podcasters, and whose names I'm going to forget. But the book is called Sounds Fake But Okay. And I believe the podcast is the same name.
Mhm.
Um, and it's like, again, two ASPEC folks. And they have like a whole part of the book where they talk kind of about like coming out and like, um, oh, what do they call it? They call it like giving the ace spiel or like the ace TED talk, whatever they call it. And like kind of how to talk about this identity with friends and family, especially because it's so like misunderstood. Like there's a reason that like anti-aceness is called ace erasure because we really are like one of the parts of the like queer spectrum that is very like dismissed and not thought of and not explained well. We don't have very much representation, like all of these types of things.
Yeah. Yeah, and I was talking about this earlier at the training this week that I put on. You have to be cautious what resources you find and what communities you find because as much as we're saying like those things are important, there are some ace and aspec communities who are very much like if you're not sex repulsed and
Mhm.
experience zero attraction whatsoever, then you are not one of us.
Right.
And so do a little skimming of these areas. That book that Sabrina's saying, totally a good one. You're not going to see that in there. There's a book called Ace by Angela Chen that also is pretty solid. You're not going to get that there. But on Discord, on Facebook, on certain subreddits, you might see some harmful discourse. So if you're looking for resources for yourself or for your partner to brush up on, if they're like, whoa, what does this mean? I've never heard of this. And are there people like that? What? Check before you do a Google search and just send them search results.
Yeah, for sure. Or the what is that thing that was really popular in the early aughts? The like, let me Google that for you. Um,
Yeah, don't just do that. Yeah.
yeah, definitely not. Yeah, I definitely think like even sending your partner like the episodes of the podcast that we've recorded, like that helped you to
Yeah.
start kind of figuring these things out. Like, hey, I listened to this podcast and it really hit me.
Yeah.
Well, do you mind listening to it?
Yeah.
Like those types of things can be helpful just to give like a shared vocabulary, especially if your partner really has like no idea what demisexual might be or might have ideas. Like that is one of the really common things is like, oh well, if you're ace or aspec, then like you are sex repulsed.
Yeah.
And not all of us are, and not all of us aren't, right? And so like um figuring out what are the good like things that you actually identify with, who's talking about it that way, and how can you offer that to your partner. And again, that can just help to like make it a little bit less personal to them.
Yeah. And maybe it'll lead them to having some conversations with you, saying either, yeah, some of that resonated with me too, but some of it didn't, or wow, that is so opposite to how I experience attraction. In fact, like the way you look is topmost, that sparks attraction first, and the way we connect is like near the bottom of my like top 10 list or top 20
Mm-hmm.
list. And it could just help you see through their experience and lens too of like, okay, so I do need that connection for us to connect in that way. They need specifically more of XYZ. How can we balance those? Or are there things we can do where all of that is included?
Yeah, it really is. Like the hard part is that like this is one of those things, like finding out if people like wipe sitting up or standing, like sitting down or standing up. There's the way.
Yeah.
Right, where it's like there's literally no reason that you would ever know this about another person unless there's a very intentional conversation about what it is. And
Yeah.
the way that our society is set up is that there's not usually a very specific conversation about what this is. And so
No.
like that's part of what makes it hard is like in the same way that you wouldn't necessarily like go up to your partner unless they like pee with the door open, which is fine, but like I'd be like, hey, how do you wipe? you
Right.
know like it's just not quite like a typical topic of conversation, even though I think that it probably should be. um the sexuality, not how you wipe. I don't give a fuck.
Although
But
hygienically, maybe depending on what is happening. And
I guess, oh
did you?
no, I don't like the idea.
Well, have you seen the discourse on usually TikTok? It's probably made its way to Instagram around white content creators and just white people in general, and being
Not
like,
washing their legs.
and not using a washcloth or a loofah, just using hands and soap. And culturally, when that's what you're taught, that's what you know how to do. But then when you see like the black content creators being like, well, have you considered have you considered your hands are not good enough, and here are some ways to cleanse yourself and get rid of excess skin, like dead skin, and do all these
Hmm.
things? It can be a game changer. And then you
Yeah,
see a lot of white people responding me like, thank you so much. I just
for
invested
teaching me
in
how to clean myself. Yeah, no, like
yeah.
it's fair. That's got a whole other fucking podcast. But yeah, I do think that there's like the thing to remember is that like we all have different ways of attraction, even if you weren't like, yeah, it doesn't feel like it goes all the way to demisexuality. Okay. You still would have a different way of feeling attraction to your partner. It's just not something that we actually talk about as a society. And so now the actual difference, what has happened is that you've been thinking about it actively.
Yeah.
And so now it's like, okay, well, now that I've been thinking about it actively and it feels like I found like a word for it and that I can then like use that word to figure out what I'm interested in or how to lean more into it or all these different things, validate myself, that's something you want to share with your partner. And that makes so much sense. And that's what you're doing. You're not like saying, "Hey, I have this terrible news," or like, "Hey, I have this like everything about me is now changed and different." It's just you're putting intentional thought to something that you likely didn't before, just from a we all function in the way we function and think of that as very normal.
Yeah. And if you do have a lot of changes that come with this, like you've discovered it and you've discovered that some of the things you used to tolerate or put up with are now limits and you're not going to put yourself through it anymore,
Hmm.
I would maybe encourage spreading those conversations out a little bit. Not too far, because then if that person attempts to do the things you want to set limits around, that's going to be tough. But giving a little bit of breathing room, whether that's a day or two or a week, and then revisiting, like, hey, now that we've had some time to sit with that, here's what I'm noticing. Here are some limits I'm going to have to set because it's just not, now that I recognize it's not comfortable and why that is, I can't keep doing those things.
Yeah. And I also think to that point, you could always say in the first conversation, like, I'm gonna keep trying to be intentional about understanding myself, and that might come with more changes. I don't know what all this means for me yet, or I only know some of what it means for me, or whatever. And so, even like the next time that we are interested in becoming intimate in some way, I might stop and like actually think, what do I want to do? What do I not want to do? Like, and
Yeah.
like all these things. And I just want you to know that like that really has more to do with me trying to be really understanding of who I am and what's happening with me now that I've got intentional thought focused on this, and not to do with like you or my interest or love for or in you, not in or for you. Found it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a great suggestion. Just kind of preemptively letting them know so that when you do or if you do have those conversations, it won't come as a total shock or go against something that you said originally where you were like, "Well, there's no changes at all ever, and I just want you to know this."
Yeah, exactly.
Cool.
Okay.
Well, I think
Well,
on yeah, the bonus content, shall we go a little deeper on maybe how to talk to your therapist about this, whether that's an individual therapist or a couples therapist?
yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. And maybe some of our own little coming out stories, or I think, we'll probably also make a little time to talk about like I'm just getting into a relationship or I'm interested in
Oh,
starting
yeah.
one, but I don't know how to talk to a person that I want to start a relationship with, because I think that that can also be a really big part is like, okay, well, at least with a partner that you already have, like there's some level of like care and respect, but what about for like starting a new thing? So we'll talk about that over on the bonus content over on upping the ante on Patreon. So that's patreon.com/aces up your sleeve podcast. Um, there are new episodes of both the Aces Up Your Sleeve podcast and the bonus content of that weekly on Tuesdays. You can find Kate at Cryptid Learns, and you can find me at Radical Insights Consulting on Facebook or Instagram. You can add a .com to either of those, and you'll get our website, which is where we have trainings for therapists, as well as different types of resources. I've got a rejection brain handbook or workbook that could be helpful if folks are feeling some rejection after having these tough combos. Um, and you can follow our podcast on Facebook and Instagram at Aces Up Your Sleeve Pod so that you can interact with us and see when new episodes release. If you have questions for us, visit neurokink.org/AUIS and send them our way. And we're going to jump over to Patreon to start recording Upping the Ante. We'll see you there.